This is San Francisco.
Welcome back to San Francisco. How do groups of people organizing outside of nonprofits, corporate models stay together, and when is it time to let organizations go? In the 1970s, of course, we know San Francisco was a big queer capital. There were the Lavender Panthers who patrolled the streets of the Castro and the Tenderloin with guns to keep gay bashers from bashing. And in 1979, during the infamous White Night riots, queers against the police state torched rows of cop cars outside of City Hall. And this is going to be a very short summary, but BAGL, which stood for Bay Area Gay Liberation, formed around this time as well as a gay front of the anti-imperialist and labor movements in the Bay, specifically supporting farm workers and the boycott of the Coors beer dynasty and the Third World movement, people fighting against U.S.-supported mass murders in places like Central America. The person I'm going to speak to today, Charlie Hinton, was coming up during this time in BAGL. And BAGL could have, during the 70s, like 100 or more people show up to meetings for a few years there. BAGL broke up over a conflict within the organization when some of its members wanted to bring a gay Air Force sergeant named Leonard Matlovich, who went into the Army as a volunteer and went to go fight on behalf of the U.S.'s greedy anti-communist war in Vietnam. And so some of the members wanted Leonard to speak at a big event at the Cow Palace down in Daly City. So they had a meeting where there was a vote, and more people did not want to roll out the red carpet for Leonard Matlovich than did. And the divisions were too deep to keep the group together. And BAGL effectively dissolved after that meeting. In the interview with Charlie, I focused on what brought BAGL together and what broke it apart. And that's about to start now. Well, first off, what did BAGL stand for?
Bay Area Gay Liberation. BAGL formed in January of 1975 in response to a police raid of Castro bars on Labor Day weekend of 1974. And it was founded in the basement of Trinity Church right over here. There were more than 200 people that came to that first meeting, including some women. And it was founded by two people, Howard Wallace and Claude Wynn, who left the Socialist Workers' Party over their anti-gay positions. And it had a very strong left, progressive, pro-labor bent from the beginning. We were the first gay group to participate in the Coors beer boycott, and we marched with the farm workers. It was at that time that there was the school board. I'm not sure what the issue was, but it was about supporting gay teachers and a gay curriculum in the schools.
Right. And
Tom Amiano and Hank Wilson, in particular, were gay teachers who were involved in that, and a couple of other people also.
Right. Tom Amiano, who went on to do, more local politics.
Right. So Tom, that was his beginning, was that campaign. So it was a groundbreaking organization for the time to try to integrate gay rights into broader movement for rights and liberation, and that it had a lot of successes.
And it sounds like, you had these communities that came out of that.
Sisters of the Asunta was one of the original precursors of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. We were supportive of, the commune movement. The ferry movement was, to a certain extent, didn't grow out of BAGL, but it was elements in BAGL that became the ferry movement.
How did you first find out about BAGL?
There were signs posted on the street inviting people to come to that organizing meeting. And I was at the first meeting and probably almost every meeting till it ended.
Love to hear that a wheat paste
Wheat
works.
paste, yeah. Well, back then especially. Now it's less. You can't, they tear them down most places now.
Right.
But it was wheat pasted signs, yeah.
Yeah, the DPW funding is wild now.
They're all over the Castro, but most other my neighborhoods, there aren't a lot of. Because I used to spend hours stapling. I didn't wheat paste, but I stapled, and go back 2 hours later, it was gone.
Yeah. Yeah. So the Coors boycott, which was an example of a really successful boycott that both cut into a company's both like their public relations budget as well as their bottom line, and also just raised the issue of this company is refusing to allow people to be out at work. Could you talk a little bit about that campaign?
I think it was about Chicano labor rights. I'm not sure it was so much gay as it was Chicano.
So it was more generally supporting Chicano and Black people who were being discriminated against by the Coors family, which, this big dynasty, very wealthy family that had more than just beer.
One of the Coors was part of one of the big right-wing think tanks funding it.
Yeah, that's huge. And so, but this was obviously one of many campaigns that you all undertook.
Yeah, also there were the Mine Shaft was a bar on Market Street, block 2 blocks from here, that was double carding people with floppy hats. And so we picketed there until they stopped that practice. And then there was a bathhouse at 9th and Howard that is now a homeless shelter that was discriminating, and we picketed there. And so we changed discriminatory policies at both of those places.
Yeah, I've been around since like the hole in the wall at one point was being picketed because anti-trans sentiment, Toad Hall as well for racial discrimination.
So the old Toad Hall or the new one?
The new one.
Well, also, what's the one across the street from it? There was a real Badlands.
Right.
There was a fairly long picket. I went to a couple of pickets there.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. A lot of these pickets that have happened and continue to happen in cases where bars are continuing to discriminate.
Right.
I feel like it's an example of organizing that it has a very specific target that in many cases did end up at least shifting, the bar policies, or in the end, maybe the bar closes, something new comes up in its place. There's also just raising the issue, I think, that having a constant picket.
Well, the Badlands is too bad because the picket didn't work. And then the owner of that bought the Pendulum, which was the one black bar, and turned it into the new Toad Hall.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, the Pendulum was the one black, place where black gay men could go and cruise in the Castro. And then before that, it was Bojangles, where I met my first lover, which was in the Tenderloin, and Larkin and Pine or so, and that got closed. Any bar that really catered to black people were targeted. And Bojangles was forced out of business, and then the Pendulum got bought by the guy who owns the Badlands.
Yeah, which did close recently, and then it reopened allegedly with I haven't looked into it, with new owners.
I don't know, but it was packed the other night. I walked past it. There was a long line to get in. Yeah, I guess they did close for a while.
Yeah. The floppy hats, though,
you
mentioned. Explain.
Well, it was mainly black people that wore, the big hats. They were double and triple carding, asking for double and triple ID.
Yeah, since then, there's definitely a lot of clubs will have no baseball caps kind of rules that seem to be in the same vein. What were some of your favorite bagel actions, or what was your favorite bagel action that you?
Well, the one that had forever changed my life was May Day 1975. We were invited to participate in a demonstration. It was May Day as a worker demonstration against the Vietnam War. And between the time it was called and the time that it placed, the North Vietnamese had won the war. The United States, sailed our troops out on the helicopters. And so it turned into this huge celebration. And BAGL went to set up a table, and we were denied the right to set up a table by these Trotskyist groups. And so it set off this battle in the left about gay rights. It brought to a head why BAGL was formed in the first place, really. And Jean Pauline, who is this wonderful woman who worked at Modern Times Bookstore, which is a leftist bookstore, she moderated that day. She got us to talk to each other and called a meeting that took place. The demonstration was on a Sunday, and the next Thursday night, we all met in a church. And members from BAGL and members from those Trotskyist organizations, I think Workers' Vanguard was one, maybe the main one, and hashed out gay rights and socialism. And I think that was the turning point in the left, starting to be more accepting of queer issues, of lesbian, gay issues. And we were just so out there. We got control of the Pride Parade one year and had it moved it to Marks Meadows. I still have my original BAGL T-shirt. The meetings were, these huge meetings, 150, 200 people. It was the uniting of the left and the gay movement a lot. It was really anti-imperialist and liberationist in a broad sense.
Yeah. And so from your perspective, the gay movement had been more just focused on gay assimilation or legal rights, or what was your...
Well, I know the magazine was pretty radical. There were communists in that.
But they were specifically focused around...
gay and queer issues.
But ostensibly, like within every... Obviously, with Palestine right now, part of the argument is well, there are gay and queer people supporting Palestine. Is there are a lot of queer Palestinians, whether or not we know of them. There are organizations like ASWAT is one of them, ASWAT, which is an organization of Palestinian lesbians. But I guess it was connecting the two.
Right. Into any imperialist perspective until no one is free, until everyone is free in that sense.
I wanted to talk about, this moment. So BAGL was doing a lot of anti-imperialist work, solidarity with Central American struggles.
That was after the split more. Nicaragua. The San Quentin 6th Defense Committee, we were part of that. I represented BAGL in that, the original BAGL, before the split. Howard was the one who was really involved. They worked with the Labor Council and the Coors boycott and the farm workers. All of those were involved. And then the teachers group started during the early BAGL days.
And you said Amiano was one of the teachers.
Yeah, that's where he really got his start as a leader. And Hank Wilson did you ever hear of Hank Wilson?
Mm-mm.
Oh, he was incredible. He was an early AIDS survivor. And he founded a hotel he worked at the Tenderloin Hotel, and it became a refuge for gay homeless people. He was really big in opposing poppers as lowering the immune system for HIV. You should Google Hank Wilson. He's dead. He's dead, yeah, but he really is he's an icon at that time, definitely. The people who led the BAGL split were socialists and communists and anti-imperialists, and focused more on left issues than gay issues. And that's why BAGL failed in the end, because we didn't do any focus at all on gay issues. It was just gay men being in solidarity groups without any center focus.
Gotcha.
But it was important in the sense, we got involved in Nicaragua. We got involved in international night of eviction of International Hotel. We organized 100 people that night for
Yeah. Online, Hank Wilson co-founded Gay Teachers Coalition, also the Butterfly Brigade.
Right.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
I wasn't part of it, but it was a group of street people just walked the streets in the Castro at night to protect people from being beaten up. They had a whistle campaign. They encouraged people to wear whistles and to use them if they saw an attack or they were attacked.
Yeah, from people who would potentially try to get people for appearing queer.
Right. Okay. Just queer bashers on the street.
Gotcha. Okay, so and speaking about the split, so it had been, offering affinity for all of these anti-imperial struggles since the labor issues, related to the Coors boycott and the anti-Black, anti-Chicano actions taken by the Coors family, and as well as the Vietnam War. So what was the year that that BAGL?
77, I think. It was over Leonard Matlovich.
Right.
And Claude and Howard came to the meeting and they wanted to put Leonard Matlovich in the Cow Palace. They had this big projection and this big idea.
Claude and Howard were two.
The co-founders of BAGL, Claude Wynn and Howard Wallace. And the Black Caucus and the June 26th, 21st Union, whatever it was, got up and walked out of the meeting. And BAGL never recovered. But it took a year before there was actually a vote on the split, to split the organization. It was about who would get the name.
It had so much power, clearly.
It had, yeah.
People wanted to, harness that.
And the rule was that anybody who came to a meeting could vote. And so those of us supporting the anti-imperialist side called everybody we knew who'd ever been to a BAGL meeting and said, come to this meeting. So we won barely. It was a very close vote. So we got the name. And the other side was very bitter and still are. I talked to Tom Amiano. He's very bitter about it. And David Goldman he still holds a lot of anger because they felt that, it was the core people who were coming to meetings got voted by people who just came to this one meeting because they'd been to a meeting before. And they really had to focus on organizing them in the gay community, and we didn't.
Yeah, maybe you could elaborate on what you would see the main arguments for or against bringing Leonard Matlovich.
Well, Leonard Matlovich was a Marine who announced how proud he was of his service in Vietnam. And this was 1977, 2 years after the war ended, so it was very fresh. And a number of the most radical people in BAGL had been members of the anti-war movement. And a movement against Pinochet dictatorship. And there was a gay organization against the Chilean dictatorship. And they were part of that group also. So the side that wanted to put Leonard Matlovich in the Cow Palace was, really focused on gay rights.
So it was this idea that, look, we'll have a big event, we'll spotlight this person who is a veteran. Like, it seems like, we'll bring this gay celebrity. What was their idea behind it,
Well, it was the beginning of gays in the military, the struggle.
Gotcha.
That was the whole thing. He came out and he was being kicked out of the Marines, and he wanted to stay in because he was proud of his service. And those who opposed the Vietnam War said no. And also it was anti-militarist, that we didn't want any army. We didn't want the right for gay people to be in the army when we wanted to abolish the army.
Yeah.
And fight U.S. imperialism.
That's huge. Yeah, I remember Dan Choi was Asian American Army infantryman who also became the face in the early 2000s of this goal that he and some other people had, which was to assimilate to the point of having a gay officer in every squad in the military. And a friend of mine actually went on Democracy Now! To spar with him about this idea that gay acceptance in the military shouldn't be our goal. These same reasons. So it's it is interesting to see both history repeating itself, but also I think it is helpful to realize that this is a fight that has been going on a long time. It's useful for me as somebody who feels activism is inextricable from who I am to know that this didn't just drop in 2005. I imagine emotions were running very hot.
Yeah.
So if you can remember, describe the feeling in the room.
I don't. I hadn't thought about it for so long. I just know it was angry.
Yeah.
And Howard formed the Gay Labor Alliance, something like that. It destroyed the organization. Neither group ever became significant after that. Well, BAGL, I don't know. We organized 100 gay people for the International Hotel Night of Eviction. That's the kind of thing we worked on.
Yeah.
We developed a book on housing in San Francisco, discriminatory housing. We were active in the Nicaraguan revolution. I was working with Zimbabwe, bringing Robert Mugabe to power. We became a gay solidarity organization instead of a gay liberation or a gay rights organization. We lost our gay focus, which was a shame. Our commonality is that we were all gay men fighting broader struggles.
Which I think it has a place to have like an activist bent to getting together a bunch of gay guys in the room. You said that initially there were lesbians that came out to the first BAGL.
Yeah,
meetings.
but it became really a men's organization. There were rarely women.
HIV/AIDS, did that have an effect on gay people doing work around anti-imperialist?
Well, that period, I was in a monogamous relationship from 1980 October through 1989 July. The last political work I did at that point was with Casa Nicaragua in support of the Nicaraguan Sandinista Revolution. Once that started to die down, I didn't get involved again until 1992 with the 500 Years of Resistance to Columbus campaign. And so I really wasn't participating and reading much. I just was not part of the AIDS movement. And I did, of course, I'm still negative because I was in a monogamous relationship. And probably the best thing that came out of it was I didn't get AIDS. Otherwise, I'd probably be dead.
I mean, it does strike me as a lot of if people were doing international solidarity movement, that some of that attention would necessarily probably be taken.
Well, the main organization that survived many years was Gays for the Nicaraguan Revolution, which was a separate gay organization, whereas I participated directly with the Nicaraguans in Casa Nicaragua. And so they lasted, first few years of the 80s for sure.
Since the dissolution of BAGL, you have been doing a lot of Haiti solidarity work. You've also been going into the prisons in California. You said that maybe you've been into all, but...
Oh, no, I've been in 7 or 8.
Okay. Yeah, there are, almost, is it 30, I think?
33 or 4. Yeah. I got re-involved in 1992 with the campaign against the 500 Years of Columbus. Then I got involved in Leonard Peltier's support group until that dissolved. And then I worked with a group called 50 Years is Enough, opposing World Bank IMF policies from about 96 and 97 until 2002. Then I started to work with Haiti Action Committee. And then I started getting more involved with prison work. And now it's both prison and Haiti Action.
Yeah. With something like BAGL, the sort of, as you said, it was a slower dissolution than many other organizations, maybe because it had been so big. And
to figure out what to do also. To decide. It's really interesting because ACT UP split up and over a lot of the same issues that BAGL did. When I read about their demise, which I was never part of, it really brought back memories of BAGL.
You mentioned at one point like socialist, Marxist kind of divisions, or
anti-imperialist.
Anti-imperialist.
And international focus.
Yeah. Are those the same divisions you're talking about as with ACT UP?
I felt ACT UP was more ideological about collective work as opposed to having votes was one thing. How the internal democracy worked.
Any lessons that you say you took away from BAGL and the dissolution?
Well, of just not having any middle ground. Not being skilled in terms of being able to negotiate differences. And I don't know how we'd have done it because the sides were so hardened. That such a great organization ended. It was sad.
Did the event at the Cow Palace, that never happened?
It never happened. There was never talk of it again after that meeting because there was no group to do it. And Leonard Matlovich, he was Republican. Not only was he, pro-Marine, he was Republican. He was a fighter and he was proud of his role. He was proud to be a Marine, and he was proud of what the Marines did, and he wanted to remain a Marine. He didn't want to be kicked out of the military because of being gay. He wanted to be right to be a Marine and do what Marines do. It's the policy in this country, support, go to football games. It's also military. Everything's so militaristic.
Yeah.
Support our troops. So he was just part of that. And pro-Matlovich people could not see contradiction. There may have not been a middle ground. It would have involved dropping Matlovich. I don't think Humpty Dumpty could be put together after that. That meeting, I'll never forget it. It was, by the time it was over, it started out with 200 people, and by the time it was ended, there were like 50 people in the room. So many people just got up and walked out. It's very angry, very bitter. He's got his star on the Castro. He's got on Market Street, his plaque now, and he is significant in that way.
I don't want to claim him for my community for sure. The same with Dan Choi, like the 2000s kind of version of Leonard Matlovich. Although for a second there, he was kind of like, for sure, the most visible, like gay Asian American who ostensibly I would have had the opportunity to look up to. But yeah, there was this, of course, because he was another Asian face who happened to be gay, his choices around what his issues were, which was bringing up this idea of gay people need to be able to serve openly in the military. Like that ended up co-opting so much of the space, certainly like in the media, like for gay issues, like the fundraising around gay issues, like a lot of the focus was going towards the military.
And marriage.
Those
are and I was never interested in either one. I support marriage, of course, but I've never had the opportunity or interest or option or companion.
When do you decide to stop going to the meeting?
I'm very consistent. I start something and I pretty much stay with it until it ends. 50 years enough. I was with that until it ended. There was a split there. And Haiti Action Committee is solid still after 25 years. Yeah. So I'm still with them. Peltier group ended because he dissolved the committee that was working for him at the time. Peltier has really been sad. He just recently denounced the people who were supporting. He's really gone through groups.
Any other words on BAGL?
It was a turning point in my life. It was one of the happiest moments of my life. It felt like I really had a community I belonged to. Out of that, the Magnus Collective developed, my housing collectives developed. For like 5 years, it was just magic. It was just, so much support and friendship and hanging out and doing things together. And I just feel so alone and isolated now that I really miss that kind of camaraderie that we had and sense of mission and purpose.
Magnus was this amazing magazine. And you mentioned the housing co-op.
Yeah.
So all members of BAGL.
Yeah, there were 5 of us lived in a cooperative. It was a collective housing where we pooled all our income and gave ourselves a weekly allowance, and everybody was in BAGL, so we go to BAGL meetings together.
Sweet. Sounds very 1970s San Francisco. It was magical. It was, my junior year in high school, my senior year in high school, junior year in college, and BAGL. Those are the 3 great periods of my life where I really felt I belonged somewhere. Thank you for listening to San Francisco. The show was produced by Toshio Moronic and edited by Tofu Estolas. If you like the show and want to help us out, you can go to patreon.com/San Francisco. All the past episodes are online there. See you next time in San